Okay, I am just about ready to wrap this in foil and get it in the furnace. Couple things left to do. I got to recountersink these holes back here. And then one thing I did is I took it up to 800 grit, which is what you're looking at now. And then what I did was I ran over to the buffer and I threw a little bit of a shine on it. And the reason I did that is at this point, before I waste the effort of going up to 1000 grit, before heat treatment, I wanted to make sure there weren't any bad imperfections in the steel that I would have to go back to, say, 300 or 400 grit and take out. But I don't see any. What I'm looking for is just those sort of imperfections in the reflection that's going to throw like a house of mirrors effect at you. Because what that indicates is a thin spot, low spot, or fat spot, or just anything that may throw this knife one way or the other when it quenches. And I don't see any. And like I said earlier, with all handwork, you're never going to get that. We're not making parallels. We're making knives. So while you want to get this as, quote, perfect as you can, you're not going to get there by hand without the use of a surface grinder. And there's just really, on a knife blade, there is no need to get it that perfect. And then at that point, can you really call them handmade? So just a few other things to do. We're going to be getting this into the furnace, and we'll kind of come back when we're quenching. I will show the foil wrap process. A couple things to point out about that I've not touched on in my earlier videos. So we'll see you on the bench with the foil here in just a little bit. Okay, gotten out the heat treating foil, and again, the most important thing about choosing your heat treating foil is the type of steel and the temperatures at which you're going to be heat treating. This is type 309, so it's rated for those higher temperatures in excess of 1950 degrees. And then there is a type 321 I use for 01. Something that's not going to get quite as hot, but it is important to choose the right kind for these higher temperatures. So I've just taken a pencil and I traced out the rough shape of what I'm going to need. So I'm going to take these snips and cut out my piece, and then I'll come back when I've gotten the rest of this foil out of the way. Alright, I've gotten the piece cut out, and I put just a fold in it down the center. And with this foil, these edges are just like little razor blades, and so if you're not careful, you're going to get what amounts to a paper cut on steroids with this stuff. So just be careful with it. So I've left enough room to make my folds. I've left excess off so I can double fold. The idea with this is you want an airtight envelope. So if you make a fold, flatten it. I use these. It does a good job. And then make another fold within that one and flatten it again. It does well to seal out the atmosphere. So you don't get decarburization and discoloring and undo all the hand finishing that you've done up to this point. That's important. The idea is to get as much of the finish work done before we go into the oven. Because when this steel comes out, it's hard, and it'd be a challenge to take it up to this level of polish. It's a lot more work to work this steel when it's hardened. The difference is that great between the annealed state that it's in now and the hardened state, even after the draw. Alright, so one of the things that I have discovered and I learned when I started using stainless grades, I did my research. I read forums. I wanted to find out all the little nuances about using this heat treating foil. And one of the things that I did read about that a few people have talked about experiencing is at 1950 degrees, this foil has been known to weld itself to the blade. You don't want that. They said it ruined all the prep work that they did up to that point, because they simply have to regrind it and get all that stuff off. It just doesn't scrape off. It's on there. So we want to prevent that. The maker of this foil also talks about that on their website. And they said the way to prevent it is simple. You just use some talcum powder. Now, they suggested unscented talcum powder. I looked everywhere, in all the stores. Everything has a scent. Even good old Johnson's baby powder has a scent. So what I ended up doing is I went on Amazon and I ordered this, and it wasn't expensive, but this is all probably a lifetime supply of lab grade talc. There's no scent in this. There's nothing in here but talcum powder. So we're gonna coat this knife blade pretty liberally with a coat of this talcum powder. And what this is going to do is create a situation that is certainly not conducive to welding. And it's just a nice little added step. I've heat treated several blades of this stainless grade, D2 included, which heat treats at just about the same temperature. And I'm not experiencing that. I've not experienced that welding phenomenon, and I want to avoid that. Okay, I have the first fold crimped down and sealed. So now I'm just going to make a fold within that and just grab it about halfway into your first fold and just start forming your second one. One of the things to make sure about and watch is any corners of the knife, any sharp edges. You want to avoid putting a little pinhole in this foil, because then you've defeated the purpose of an airtight seal to begin with. And what will happen is right at that spot you'll get a big ring of decarburization that you have to grind off. So we avoid that. We put a lot of work into it to this point, and so let's not undo what we've done. So I just get that started over on that double fold where I can grab it now and just crimp it shut. If you didn't have sheet metal pliers like I'm using, you can just use a roller, and I still do. You just want to get out any of the excess that you can. Alright, so once again I'm finding the ends of my knife. So I want to come back here and do a fold just about in the middle of that. And get it formed over. Crimp it down, and then not even letting go of it. That's when we make our second fold. Leave enough room in your foil pack for expansion of the steel. That's important. Don't come all the way to the end of the knife, because this is going to grow in the furnace and the point will poke through the foil. So leave room for this thing to slide around a little bit. There. Now we have a good 1/4 inch on each side of the knife to allow, I don't know how much it expands in the furnace, but it does expand some. So that is one foil pack knife. Now I just bump it around just to make sure that talcum powder is getting all over everything we want it to, which is everything inside this foil. And we're going to turn the furnace on here in just a few minutes and get this in. Okay, we've gotten through our preheat normalizing temperature and time, and we're making the climb up to hardening temperature. And I went ahead and I heated up my oil. When you quench this steel, you want to quench it down and get it down to around 110 degrees, but no hotter than 110. So what I did, I went ahead and put the fire under my oil and got it heated up to about 140 degrees, since we do have some time left until that steel is ready to come out. And I'm going to let it cool off now till it's around between 100 and 110 degrees. And then we'll quench it and get it into the draw. Now, I will show it to you guys when it comes out of that foil pack, just to show you how nice the foil wrapping does keep steel, and just leaves you a lot less work to do after heat treat. So come back when we're pulling out for the quench. Okay, we've been in there at hardening temperature for just the right amount of time. So I'm going to turn off the pyrometer. The oil is down about 105 degrees. So we're going to get it out of there and get it into here quickly. And then you move it around once it's in that oil and just keep exposing it to oil that hasn't been superheated. You leave it in there. Now we can shut the furnace off. Always move it. And to ensure we get it cooled down to that 110 degree range, we leave it in there for quite some time. Every now and again I'll pull it out, and if I quit seeing oil cook off the surface of the foil, then I know that I've left it in there long enough. Okay, I got the worst of that oil cleaned off of there. I'm just unfolding one end so I can get my aviator started. It's difficult when you get up in these 4-layer pieces. Let's see if we can get her to come out of there. There we are. Alright. So we stayed nice and clean during the heat treatment, which is that's why we foil wrap. This is still pretty warm, but I want to get this into the to the draw now. All tool steel. You don't want it to sit around in this really hardened state for too darn long. This is not as fussy as 01. 01 can crack just sitting there if you let it get too cold. This is still pretty darn warm. That file won't begin to bite that. Good hard steel. Alright, so we stayed straight in the quench, and the rest of the finish should go pretty nicely, but we have to get this into the draw now. So we'll show it to you after it comes out of the drawing oven in about 5 hours, because you have to draw for 2 hours at 400 degrees, let it cool to room temperature, and then go back in for that same amount of time at that temperature. So you'll see it a little later today when it is out of there.